Okay, Chair, we're now live.
Good evening and welcome. Welcome to this meeting of the Council. The seating plan of the Council chamber has been reorganised to provide as safe an environment as we can for members and officers in attendance. Please maintain a social distance if you can, avoid disturbing the screens, and be aware that you are advised to wear a mask throughout the meeting. Please follow directions from committee services and enter and exit from the building. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny manager to update you on the systems being used and to confirm that officers in remote attendance are present. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much. I'll start with our officers in remote attendance in the order in which they're appearing on my screen. Ian Cooper. Ian Cooper, can you hear us? Anthony Roche.
Good evening.
Jeanette Thompson.
Good evening.
Joe Dufficy.
Present, thank you.
Louise Randall.
Present, thanks.
Sarah Kingsley.
Present, thanks.
Steve Crowley.
Present, thank you.
Anne Banner.
Present, thank you.
Isabel Allerdews.
Present.
Can I try Ian Cooper again? Okay.
He's reporting he's having internet issues, so let's give him a moment.
Thank you very much. Can I also confirm that we have Richard Beasley.
Good evening, present.
Good evening. And Stuart Cunliffe.
Yes, present, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the Zoom call that I have not called? No. Would you like, I will proceed with the rest of the procedural items and try and get hold of Ian Cooper when he's ready. This meeting is being audio recorded and filmed and live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel. The recordings will be available to view on the Council's website and YouTube channels after the meeting has ended. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on their microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start? Thank you very much. Can I just try again? Ian Cooper, are you able to hear us?
He hasn't made it back into the call yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absence. Apologies for absence received from councillors Gary Grindle, John Bishop, Jean Green, Sean Prendergast, Lisa Nash, Sam North, Kate Hart and Kate Aspinwall. Are there any others?
Terry Tyler.
Thank you. And Councillor Strong?
Yes, apologies from Councillor Ian Moody. Unfortunately, his son's tested positive.
So I've added Terry Tyler, Ian Moody and Tony Hunter to the apologies. Item 2, minutes. We've got 3 lots of minutes. The 11th of November 2021, the 7th of December 2021 and the second meeting on the 7th of December 2021. I propose we take as read and approve as a true record of proceedings the minutes of the meetings held on 11th November 2021, the 7th of December 2021 and the second meeting on the 7th of December 2021. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Dennis Hardberg. Can we have a vote, please? Vote on the accepting all those minutes together.
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried. Can I just use this opportunity to remove some cards from the system and also make sure that Councillor Cowell, did you vote on that item? Can you turn on that? Seems to be working now.
Item 3, notification of the business. I have none. Item 4, Chair's announcements. First announcement is in remembrance of Councillor Paul Clark. It is with great sadness that we mark the death of Councillor Paul Clark, who passed away in December of 2021. Paul served as District Councillor between 1995 and 1999, and then from 2001 to 2015, and then from 2016 to the present day. He was a ward member for Hitchin Highbury for his entire service, becoming Deputy Leader of the Council, Executive Member for Planning, and Leader of the Liberal Democratic Group. Paul will be missed by many people, and our thoughts with his family and friends at this sad time. Would any member like to speak? Councillor Ruth Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to just make a brief tribute to Councillor Paul Clark. It's with deep sense of sadness and loss and a huge amount of appreciation that I pay tribute to all that Paul has been to this council as Deputy Leader, Cabinet Member for Planning and Leader of the Lib Dem Group. I've always found Paul to be kind, thoughtful and generous-hearted and will miss his support. He was very understanding of each individual member's circumstances and would often remind us that family comes first. I never expected to find myself in the position of group leader and deputy leader of the council, and I still feel a sense of shock and unreality about the situation. Even in the short time since Paul's passing, I'm already discovering how much is involved in this role and realising how hard he worked on our behalf. Paul sought to lead by consensus, which is not easy with a group of liberal and independent-minded colleagues, and his example will be hard to follow. Our condolences go to him, his family.
Thank you. Councillor Brown. Councillor Dennis Harbord.
Thank you, Chair. I think Paul would turn to me at this point probably and say, "Oh God, not another eulogy." And that is very much what he was like. He was a professional councillor in the best sense, I think, of the word. He was dedicated and devoted to his community and to the area that he lived in, alongside the areas in Hitchin that he has represented. The St Michael's Mount Community Association is incredibly grateful to him for the work that he did during the periods when he wasn't sitting on this council supporting local scouts groups and activities at the community centre, because that's just who he was. He also had a wicked sense of humour. I do miss him passing notes mid-meeting to my colleague Ian Albert about what the Barnet score was during that council meeting, and friendly football banter. And with some surprise, I learned recently that he was also an Arsenal Football Club supporter too, which is ironic given the amount of stick he used to give me for supporting Arsenal. He could also be cantankerous and wasn't afraid to admit that as well, and was a great friend and supporter and wonderful colleague. And I'm proud to have had him as my deputy leader during the brief time we were able to work together. It was, after all, a month ago when we were all sat here at our last council meeting, some of us very, very concerned about Paul because something just didn't feel right. And obviously we later learned that he sadly passed away that very day before the meeting occurred as a result of COVID. And I think it's a fitting tribute to Paul that we are working tirelessly to continue the very, very good work, putting our communities first and looking after and protecting all members of this council and our community in these very trying times. I miss him greatly. I've said far too many words about him in all kinds of places. So I think the best thing I should do is listen to him and just shut up now.
Thank you. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the Conservative Group, we'd like to give our condolences to Paul's family, friends and colleagues. I first met Paul in 1995 when we were both elected to North Herts District Council, and we did our induction together. I think the loss to Hitchin for all the support that he gave to the town is it is a great loss, and I'm sure he's going to be fondly remembered for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Having served as Deputy to Paul in the planning portfolio, I can't let this opportunity go without putting on record my appreciation for all the work which he did and which we were able to do together to move forward, despite outside influences, to move forward the development of North Hertfordshire. And Paul was always a pleasure to work with. We were both able to work together, and I think it's going to be sadly missed in this council. I'm sure his successor will do as good a job, but I think we need to record how much we miss Paul and how much we will lose from his contribution in this very important area of the council's work.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Barnard.
I first met Paul back in the atmosphere of Hitchin Swimming Centre and back in the early 1990s, and we became friends. We never ever talked politics or anything nasty like that. We did talk about the better things in life, like Arsenal Football Club, Saracens Rugby Club, and latterly Hitchin Rugby Club. Yeah, Paul was a great friend to have. And even in chamber, Paul would contribute absolutely brilliantly in planning matters and so on and so forth. He was always friendly, he was always fair, he was knowledgeable, and he will be a great loss to the council and the community at large. We'll miss him.
Barnard. I'd like to ask members to join me in a minute's silence. Secondly, I'd like to speak in remembrance of Honorary Alderman F.J. Smith. It is with great sadness that we learned of the death of former leader of the council, Councillor F. John Smith, who died on Christmas Day. He was leader of North Herts District Council for 12 years, from 1999 to 2010, stepping down in 2010 after completing exactly 50 years service. And the same year, he was awarded honorary alderman status. He was a well-respected, valued member of the community, and our thoughts are with his family and friends at this sad time. Would any member like to speak? Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Actually, just to clarify, I believe he actually died on Boxing Day. But again, I'd like to pay tribute to John. When I joined the council in 1995, John became the leader of the Conservative group, and then he took over as leader in 1999. Sorry. John gave me personally a great understanding of how the council works. He was very supportive, and for many, many years, I was his deputy in the Conservative group. It's a great loss, but just as you read out all the service, he knew what public service was about. And it's a great tribute for the years that he was not only a district councillor, but also a town councillor. And I know that he was very honoured when he was made an alderman of this council when he left. I did note, I think, in the members' information that there is going to be a memorial service for FJ Smith, but that's not until September. And I hope that many of the colleagues here in the council chamber, those that remember him, will be there to honour his memory. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So F. John has been a well-known local figure in Royston for many years, and as a Royston resident for the last 35 years, although I didn't know him personally, I certainly knew of him before I joined him on the town council in May 2018. He was a founder member of the Royston District Twinning Association and signed the first twinning agreement with Groß-Almerode, Germany in 1974, which came about as a result of Johnson Matthey's use of the crucibles manufactured there. Many of you may know that he also worked for Johnson Matthey. He continued to support town twinning until recently, when he became too ill to attend committee meetings. F. John took a keen interest in Royston's history and wrote the Town Trail, which has been used as a guide by many visitors to the town, including groups of young people from Groß-Almerode. During his last term on the town council, he suggested that we should use some Section 106 monies to install 2 bus shelters in Royston, one of which was completed last year. And you may have seen the photos of Councillor Collins and our Mayor, Councillor Hughes, when that was installed. And that idea first came from F. John. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis Harbour.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't have the privilege of working with or knowing F. John Smith. However, from what I've learned about him, from what Claire's told us here and in other places, and how officers have spoken of his commitment and dedication to this authority over the years, I'm proud that he was a leader of this authority, and it's great to see the ongoing contribution that he continued to make in his community in Royston after leaving this council. And I think it's fitting and right that we note our thanks for the service that he gave this authority.
Billing.
Thank you, Chair. I did work with John for a long time, and I think our approaches to politics could possibly not have been more different if they tried. I arrived here as somebody who thought that being a local councillor meant that you were going to change the world, and I'm still struggling with that notion. Whereas his notion seemed to be that you worked as hard as you could to make a tiny bit of difference here and there, but basically keep the world as it was, because he had a much greater faith that the world was a good place in the first place. And once, when I most remember that when he was challenged about why we weren't making better progress on something, or the direction of the council wasn't as exciting as some of us thought it should be, he gave the most marvellous answer, which I've never forgotten, and it's always made me chuckle, which is, I think we're motoring very nicely along. And some of you will remember that. And hands up if you remember him saying that. Yeah, I thought one or two of you would. And it was a lovely picture, and he had a dry sense of humour that went with it. He knew it would irritate me beyond belief, but that was all there was to do to transform the world. And he laughed at me forever on that one. And I already miss him quite a lot. Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask the members to join me in a minute's silence for F. John Smith. To continue with the meeting, first of all, the notices. Audio recording. In accordance with the council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on ModGov and video via YouTube after the meeting. Climate emergency. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision and means that as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out our various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. Declaration of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Rules of debate. Please can I remind you that the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and time to speak will apply. No speeches may be made after the mover has moved a proposal and explain the purpose of it until the motion has been seconded. When seconding the motion or amendment, a member may reserve their speech until later in the debate. In accordance with the Constitution, please can members ensure that no speech exceeds 5 minutes without the consent of the chair. Standing to speak. Members are reminded there is no longer any requirement to stand while addressing the council, and by remaining seated is both safer and ensure your comments are accurately recorded by the microphones. Comfort break. I plan call a break around 9 p.m. or suitable break in business. In the event of a break, please follow directions of the committee service team. Change in the order of business. There will be a change to the order of business as printed on the agenda. Items 17 and 18 will now be taken after item 8. Public participation. There is one public participation item. I will hand over to committee member and scrutiny manager to introduce. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. A petition has been received regarding extending the opening periods of Hitchin and Letchworth outdoor pools. The link to the petition was included in the council agenda where members can view its subject and content. When submitted, the petition purported to have over 1,260 signatures. Petition is still live on the change.org website, and so this figure has subsequently increased. One of the requirements of a petition is that it has at least 120 supporters who are registered local government electors or a resident of the district or own a business in the district. While we have not verified all 1,260 signatures, we are satisfied that 120 of those at the time of submission complied with this requirement. The petition organizer is attending council to present. I'd like to invite Mrs. Susan Foster to present her petition.
Thank you very much. Shall I stand or am I better sitting? My name's Sue Foster, and I'd like to say thank you very much for allowing me to come and talk to you this evening about extending the opening periods of Hitchin and Letchworth outdoor pools, ideally from April to the end of September. I've swum at Hitchin and Letchworth outdoor pools, I'm going to call them Lidos from now on, for over 30 years. And since my retirement, I've swum every day, rain or shine, and I'm certainly not alone in this. I could have been any one of a number of people stood here talking to you tonight. Every year we rejoice when the Lidos open and feel so sad when they close. And every year we say the same thing, oh, if only they were open for longer. We realised after lockdowns and almost 7 months off swimming, how precious outdoor swimming is to us all. So a few friends got together and decided to act. In the petition, which now it's almost 1,300 people have signed, we listed the reasons for longer opening. I won't detail them here, but I would like to comment on just two. Firstly, the increased interest in outdoor swimming. Swim England did a survey last year which showed the number of people now actually outdoor swimming has increased by up to 300%. And secondly, our changing climate. Over the last 4 decades, May has officially been the sunniest and driest month, and our Lidos are closed for most of it. Now, to people who aren't swimmers, this love of outdoor swimming might seem a bit strange. I mean, swimming is swimming, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you do it. But if I compare it to running, walking, or cycling, swimming indoors is like doing your run or walk on a treadmill or on exercise bike indoors for 8 months of the year. The experiences of the two things just don't compare. Outdoor swimming is nothing short of a spiritual experience. The sunlight on the water, the passing clouds, trees moving in the breeze and birds flying overhead, and the nature on Norton Common. It's a perfect antidote to stress. Also indoors, there's much less space to swim, and obviously the pools are shorter. Many Lidos opened for longer in 2021 as they hadn't been fully open the year before, or indeed not at all like ours. Figures from just 3 Lidos I've swum at have showed attendances up by 25%, 90% and 100%. We had an extra week at Hitchin, which was really welcome, and it was good to see so many Letchworth swimmers there. It was noticeable that both pools had visitors from farther afield. The Lidos are such friendly places, it's inevitable you end up chatting to strangers. You may be aware of this book, the Lido Guide. And this was first published 3 years ago, and it's massively helped in the resurgence of outdoor swimming. The book has led to many visits to our pools from people from living outside our area. And indeed, when our Lidos close, many of us go on a Lido tour to as many that are still open, and we spend our money in those Lidos where we could be spending them at home. I've travelled to 14 other pools, but I'm a mere beginner. Some of my friends have travelled to over 40. I haven't got time to read them now, but there are some lovely comments in this book about our 2 Lidos. And I'll leave them with Louis, if anyone wants to look at them. Now, people were able to comment on the petition, and I'd just like to quote a few, which really touched me. Tracy said, "My son and I love the Lido and it keeps him calm and happy. He's severely autistic and looks forward to swimming outdoors." Helen said, "Swimming at the Lido before work helps me deal with my stress levels. It's been fantastic for my mental health this year as I'm a frontline healthcare worker." Pauline said, "My partner has a cycling accident 3 years ago, which left him with a brain injury. He loves to go swimming. It's great for his mind and body, and he's always so disappointed when the Lido closes." And lastly, Michael said, "Swimming at Letchworth Lido has repaired my health a number of times over the last 10 years. It's a great blessing to me and to others." On a very personal note, over 3 years ago, just as the pools were about to open, I received a devastating diagnosis, one which we all dread. I had bowel cancer. The shock was immense. I asked the surgeon how long would I be out of the pool for, as I was a very keen swimmer. She said, "Does it run in your family?" I said, "No, I'm the first serious swimmer." She and the rest of the medical team burst out laughing when she explained actually she meant bowel cancer, not swimming. She said to me, "Your love of swimming is going to speed your recovery." And she was right. I was back in the pool within 8 weeks. The subsequent depression I suffered due to the enormity of my experience was horrendous. But Hitchin Lido and my friends there healed me, and I know that it's healed many other people with similar dreadful experiences. This place means so much to me. I want my ashes scattered there. We realise, lastly, that there are financial constraints on the length of opening of pools. We'd obviously like them to be open all the time. But if that's not possible, perhaps you could consider staggering the opening periods or opening for fewer hours a day, as quite a few Lidos do. Or perhaps you could look at an alternative pricing strategy. Thank you so much for listening. Me and many other swimmers really hope you listen to our plea. It will help the physical and mental well-being of your constituents enormously. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Foster. Do members have any questions or clarification of Mrs. Foster? Councillor Levitt?
Yeah, thank you. I think you clarified it towards the end there about you're not necessarily looking for all year round opening, but looking at extended hours. And I did notice the thing on Look East, I think it was last night, about Newport Pagnell Lido, I think it was Webburn, was it? But quite no heating or anything on, so there wasn't that extra cost to put in there. So yeah, thank you for presentation. It was excellent. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you and the 1,300 other members of the public that have voted for this. I'm lucky enough to be the ward councillor for Gosmore, that area, so Hitchin South area. And in the past 8 years, I've been a councillor. The number of people that have approached me about the management of the pool in general, but certainly on the Lido, are absolutely supportive of this. I think it's not just the occasional swimmer, certainly across Letchworth and across the Hitchin area. There's a lot of clubs in there, the Hitchin Swimming Club, Letchworth Swimming Club, and they just can't get the lane time that they need within it. So I think this is absolutely, for, as we've seen over the lockdown with health and fitness, as you point out, it's absolutely imperative that the council look to do something. Rather cheekily, I will say, this has been brought up with Stevenage Leisure in the contract that we've had in the past, and we haven't reached a satisfactory sort of answer at the minute. I'm sure the portfolio holder would look into this as well, but very supportive of the facts you're bringing forwards. Thank you.
Councillor Howard. Councillor Jarvis.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I think we'll, or at least most of us, understand the enormous benefits of the open air pools and want to see them open for as long as we possibly can. I think one of the things that's really useful is to understand what happens elsewhere. And I'm not sure if the list of places you've been that managed to open longer is included in the petition. But if it's not, if you'd make that information available to us, because it's important to understand how some places are managing to remain open much longer. I can't promise that we're going to achieve the same, but I think to understand what's happening elsewhere and the ways in which they're perhaps attracting larger numbers of people will be very useful. So if you can let us have that information, we can go and talk to the people who are running those pools and understand how they are doing something that at the moment we're not managing to do.
The information is in the one of the references to the petition. Actually, it's an article in the Guardian newspaper.
Experience on that would also be very useful. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you, Chair. I myself grew up swimming in Lidos from, I actually learned to swim when I was 21 months old without armbands, nearly drowned. It was great fun in Lidos, and I went to Lidos all over the southeast when I was growing up. I was heavily involved as a volunteer lifeguard for one of the Lidos in East Sussex, and I couldn't sort of say it better how you put that. And one of the things that I think was really interesting there is about change of hours and open times. I actually found one of the biggest problems I had, which stopped me from going to Hitchin in Letchworth this year, was how early it shut in the evenings. So actually, the idea of having one of the pools opening a month early, one of closing a month late, having a change of open hours should certainly be looked into. And I think the concession contract's up fairly soon with SLL anyway. So maybe we could look at using that going forward for the new contract. But secondly, maybe having a bit of goodwill, since we sent so much money to SLL this year, to see if they could maybe put something in place next year as a goodwill gesture.
I'll let you continue, but I just say this is a clarification. Answers from Mrs. Foster. I'm sure she can't answer that one, but in fact this will then go to the cabinet, and from there be looked at and in terms of the budget. So this really is just questions of Mrs. Foster. Councillor Frost.
Sorry, I'm sat behind you. And we're spread out everywhere. Thank you for that presentation. It's great. I started swimming when I was 6 years old, and I started at Hitchin and actually went on to swim for Great Britain for a number of years. Hitchin is so fond to my heart as well. I lifeguarded at Hitchin for many years in my teens to earn those extra pennies. I've now got young children who love swimming there as well. I mirror the thoughts of my fellow councillor that with young children and work commitments, I struggle now to swim because it closes so early in the evening. So more weeks, more hours, I'm all for it. And Hitchin swimming pool is also drawing in new clubs all the time. There's just been the new age group triathlon club set up at 6:30 in the morning. They want more lane time. They want more space. They want more lane time. And also there is a a triathlon club / running club organisation called Burnt Hair, who are looking at setting up a triathlon series, which are drawing in people with experience like myself, but also people that have never done it. So, and it's drawing people to the area. It's not just for people within North Hertfordshire, it's drawing people to Hitchin, which obviously we want our town to be vibrant. So I'm wholeheartedly for this.
Councillor Frost. Councillor Barnard, you may have had something to do with that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm probably going to echo exactly what my daughter has said, but I certainly would like to emphasise the frustration. I mean, I spent it seems like half of my life beside the pool at Hitchin as head coach and chairman of the club and this and everything else there. But it wasn't just the club. The major frustration was always from the public that during the summer months, as the balmy July and August that we seem to have had many years ago, that the pool didn't open until, let's say, 8 o'clock or something like that, and it closed at 6 or 6:30 in the evening, which would still give you 2 or 3 more hours of lovely sunny evenings and early morning swimming as well. So I was very, very privileged to have spent a lot of time there, and as I mentioned earlier on, that's where I first met Paul Clark when he had his children there. Faye went on to swim for Great Britain and open water. She actually was a bronze medalist nationally. So yes, I fully support it, and I hope the council will look upon this. It is a certain amount financial because obviously
Councillor Barnard, can I stop you there, please?
You can if you like.
Thank you. Councillor McNally.
Yes, it is evident that there are quite a few sports people within the council who are into water sports, and we do look with great concern on the diminution of the facilities generally that Sport England has, and Swim England rather, and their CEO Jane Nickerson has highlighted, and are working behind the scenes to try and do what we can to stop that. But I wonder, with regard to the Lidos within the North Herts district area, what we seem to have here is a very, very articulate group and passionate group of people who want to keep the facilities going. And it seems to me that one strand of getting these facilities to keep going is to broaden the usage of those facilities. And it may be that we could use some ideas from users of those facilities. So perhaps you could, would you go back to your group and get your heads together to just brainstorm, if I'm allowed to use that term nowadays, some ideas as to how we can maximize those particular resources. And I think that will be a really, really good thing. And we can get to work together to sort this out.
Can I just ask Councillor Jarvis to comment on that?
I think we're always ready to talk to people. We have engaged with a number of, it was a group of people who came with some ambitions to open at least one of the pools for longer last year. And there were some quite extensive discussions with them. I think they eventually didn't get anywhere on the basis that they were not able to assemble a large enough group of potential users. But I think we're always willing to talk to people and explore ways in which these pools can be open for as long as possible. So I'm very happy to talk to the users about that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. This seems to be more about statements about swimming rather than questions to the petitioner, but I do thank the petitioner very much for enabling this debate to take place. I chaired Hitchin Committee, I think, for 12 years in a stretch, and for a lot of that time, Paul Clark was Vice Chair of Hitchin Committee, and every single year we looked for ways that we could keep the open air swimming pool in Hitchin open for longer hours during the summer months. And we had 1 or 2 successes, we had 1 or 2 failures, because we couldn't seem to galvanise the swimming community were to work with us to make sure it was used enough. And we certainly couldn't galvanise the support of all the councillors on Hitchin Committee. But it's so exciting now to hear how enthusiastic everybody is about taking this forward in a much more constructive way. And I really look forward to the next debates we have on it and the ways in which we can see what is possible for the future. Now that the public are with us, we can take it forward and look for the best ways around the country of where it's working to the advantage of the people that we represent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Billing. And yes, one thing.
This is a bit contentious. Would it be worth exploring another company to work with? Because there are other companies who are very committed to open air pools. I'm talking of Better and organisations.
I'm sorry,
like
I'm
that.
going to have to cut you off there, Mrs. Short. But thank you very much. It's been really interesting and I've learned a great deal about swimming in North Herts. Thank you very much. So as the Council's Cabinet will be finalising the draft budget proposals and recommending the budget for 2022-2023 to the Council at their meeting on the 25th of January, this is the most appropriate avenue for this petition. There are a number of Cabinet members present at this meeting tonight who have heard your presentation. Therefore, we'll consider the petition then. So it will. That's what its path will be. I would like now to continue. Item 6, which is motions on notice. There are no motions submitted. Item 7, questions from members. There are no questions submitted by members. Item 8, council side submission to Local Government Boundary Commission for England, in brackets LGBCE. Members are reminded that we have Richard Beasley, the consultant assisting the council on this submission, who is available remotely. Is that true? Yes. To answer questions. Councillor Melanie Stimson to report.
Thank you, Chair. The first stage of the electoral review of North Herts Council by the Local Government Boundary Commission for England is to determine council size. That's the number of councillors to represent North Herts Council from May 2024. The timetable for the review has been agreed with the Commission for when key pieces of work are required. The first key piece of work is to develop and submit a council size proposal. The Council needs to agree the submission by the required deadline, which is tomorrow. Submissions on council size can be made to the Commission from a range of stakeholders, including the Council, elected members, political parties and the public, which the Commission carefully considers. So if this council does not make a submission or fails to make a coherent case, the Commission will base its recommendation for the future size of this council on other submissions they receive. Attached as Appendix A of the report is a proposed submission which includes a council size of 50 members. Having discussed council size at the Boundary Review Project Board, group leaders suggested a council size of 50 members, given the projected growth in the local plan, the nature of the district with its mix of more densely populated towns and sparsely populated large rural areas that need to be a manageable size for the rural ward councillors. It is also believed that reducing the number of members would deter individuals from standing as a councillor, thereby further impacting on the diversity of representation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of Melanie at this point about what she said? That's quite clear. Good. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Dennis Harbour.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose and reserve my right to speak.
May I have a seconder for the motion?
Happy to second, reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Right, shall we have the debate? Who'd like to speak first? Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think probably for me, when I'm reading the report and obviously been involved because I've sat on the project board with the other two group leaders, is page 43, which actually gives a little table which shows the number of councillors and what the change would be if there was a reduction or an increase. Sorry. Sorry, it's just a distraction there. Not quite sure why the cross-party agreement is still highlighted in yellow, because I thought we did have some cross-party agreement when we actually had our meeting, and that we had come down to the fact that we felt that a reduction in size of a reduction of the numbers of councillors was not going to be in the interest, particularly the fact that we have large rural wards, and that in fact if we moved to 50, that gave so the increase in the elector to councillor ratio is a 12% increase. There is going to be a large additional number of building going on in the district, which is why this accounts for such a rise in the numbers, as this is projected out to, I think it's 2028, if my memory serves me. And you could argue if we wanted to keep it the same, that would be a massive increase in the number of councillors. But I think just to have a small increase to take into effect that there is growth in the council, but we don't want to overburden councillors, particularly in the rural wards where we have parish councils and everything else to go to. So that having an increase in the council size number to 50, and I'm sure that additional one councillor would be able to be squeezed in somewhere between the screens that we have with us, if they're still with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just clarify that it's in yellow because we didn't know whether there would be cross-party agreement this evening. Just technical. Okay, anybody else to speak? That right to reply? Sorry. Oh, Councillor Hoskins.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to speak against this because I don't think the council should increase in size. I think the number of electors represented per councillor, looking at comparatives, even if we went to 2,500 or 2,750 electors would bring us down somewhat. I think in these days of electronic communications, it should not be onerous to increase the number of electors per councillor. When the Local Government Boundary Commission for England report hove into view, I thought, wonderful, we're going to get a fundamental review of the provision of local government, but it was not to be. It's merely tinkering at the margins. So if anything, leave it as it is until such time as this government gets around to definitively coming down with what it's going to do with local government, because they will do at some point. So we might as well leave it as it is until that time, and if we are not going to be radical enough to reduce it. Thank you.
Any other comments? So we're voting on that the council approves the document on council size attached as Appendix A for submission to the LGBCE. Noting the deadline for submission is 21st of January 2022, tomorrow. The council size of 50? Is that clear? Should we go to the vote?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
We're now going to go to item 17, exclusion of the press and public. I would like to propose the following motion. That under section 100A of the Local Government Act of 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Dennis Harburg. Can we have a vote?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you. So we are now going to move into part 2. Sorry? Yes. Yes. In events. At the comfort break, it will be 10 minutes. It is only a comfort break and drinking water from the fountains. Please do not leave your seats unless you're going for a comfort break. And can we start with the back row? It's like being in school. The back row go first and then work the way to the front. And so we try and be as safety conscious as possible. Thank you. Welcome back. After our break, we're now on item 9. Items referred from other committees. 9A, referral from Cabinet, integrated performance management. I will take this with item 10. 9B, referral from Cabinet, second quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury, review 2021 to 2022. I will take this with item 11. 9C, referral from FAR, appointment of external auditors. I will take this with item 12. 9D, referral from Cabinet, council tax reduction scheme. I will take this with item 13. 9E, referral from FAR, updated contract procurement rules for 2022-2023. Referral and a link to report has been published, a supplementary agenda, which also includes an addendum to the report reflecting the amendments suggested at FAR. Councillor Hoskins to present the referral, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, you caught me on the hop. External auditors or contract procurement, so I wasn't listening.
Forward to move the recommendation, that's fine.
Fine, then I'm quite happy to do that. I have some notes here if there are any questions.
And have we got a seconder, please? Councillor.
Is it procurement? Yeah,
yes.
But I'm happy to second, reserve the right.
Thank you. That's Councillor Albert. Shall we go to debate? Anyone wish to debate this matter? Councillor Compton?
Nothing really contentious. I just really wanted to say well done for such a quick change around after Brexit and a number of other regulatory changes. I think the document's really well put together and it's a very good addition.
Thank you. Any others? So the recommendation is that the council adopts the updated contract procurement rules 22-2023. Can we have the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried.
Item 10, integrated performance management. Councillor Ian Albert to present report and referral and propose.
Cheers. Thanks, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think this report has been has gone around various committees. The main detail of the report was for Cabinet to approve, and we did that at our meeting in December. That was on the basis that we really think it will improve the focus of our performance in delivering our objectives and indeed will help support the role of overview and scrutiny. Both overview and scrutiny and FAR both fully supported proposals. Tonight, colleagues, we're asking Council to approve the minor changes to the Constitution detailed in section 9, which obviously talks about the Cabinet's responsibilities. So I'd like therefore to move recommendation 2.2, Chair.
Thank you. Can I second it, please? Councillor Dennis Harburg, seconder.
Yeah.
For a debate, like to say something? No? Should we go to the vote then? The vote of the recommendation. The council approves the changes to the Constitution as detailed in section 9 of the report.
Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried.
Thank you. Item 11, second quarter investment strategy, capital and treasury review, 2021-2022. In Albert to present report, referral and propose.
Cheers. Thanks, Chair. I mean, obviously, in the interest of time, I'll be fairly brief. FAR and Cabinet monitor our Treasury position on a quarterly basis, and the Council approve the strategy at the start of the year and also receive updates on the mid-year and end-of-year position. This is in line with best practice. As our Treasury management position is included within our overall investment strategy, this is the overall document that includes the capital position as well. This has been reviewed by FAR, who were content with it. It's probably worth just briefly saying, I mean, there is has been a small increase in our investment income forecast. There is, as Ian Cooper pointed out to FAR, there is a new SIPFA prudential code underway, which is expected, which would alter the way the council borrows money to fund future projects. And indeed, obviously, that we've also had a high balances of government money due to business rate grant funding, and we've looked at short-term investments in stable funds to explore how we make best use of that and best use of those funds. But on that basis, Chair, I'd just like to move recommendation 2.4 that we note the position on Treasury management.
Please. Councillor Dennis Halberg, second. Debate? Should we go to the vote? Voters' recommendations. The Council notes the position of Treasury management activity as at the end of September 2021.
And that motion is also carried.
Item 12, appointment of external auditors for 2023-24 through to 2027-28. Councillor Keith Hoskins to present report, referral and proposed recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Debate? Go to the vote.
That motion is carried.
Item 13, Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2022 to 2023. Councillor Albert to present report, referral and propose.
Cheers, thanks, Chair. I mean, I will take just a little bit longer on this one. I mean, I've mentioned a cabinet, but I think there's, I don't know, we've obviously got some staff present this evening, but I think it's particularly, thanked sort of Joe Dafferty and Banner and other colleagues for all the work that has been done around supporting our residents through some really difficult periods in their making claims for council tax reduction. The work of the staff has been absolutely exemplary. Now, the report comes to Cabinet each year for onward recommendation to Council regarding the approval of the council tax reduction scheme for the following financial year. The council tax reduction changed in 2013 with the introduction of localised schemes, and this council scheme is based on the old council tax benefit scheme and is therefore means tested, with a standard percentage reduction being made to the final award. This is currently 25%. It's detailed in section 8 of the report. A full review of the scheme had been started at the end of 2019, but had to be postponed due to the pandemic and the impacts of that both on the team due to carry out the review. We saw a significant increase in workload administering government COVID grants, and also because of the impact the pandemic had on our residents. We saw an increase in the number of council tax reduction scheme claimants. Clearly, the pandemic has lasted much longer than we anticipated, and therefore the case remains that the full review has been postponed, and we're hoping to take this forward later this year in 2022. Therefore, the recommendation at 2.4 is that no changes are made to the scheme for 22-23, and as such, we carried out a light touch consultation in November, and obviously we also talked to some of our external partners. Consultation took place with HCC and the PCC and with the public via our website. No formal comments on the proposals were received. 7.3 through to 7.6 of the report details the numbers and categories of claimants and how that has changed over the years. the number of claimants had been declining so steadily from around 9,000 to around 7,000 in 2019. But the pandemic has seen this number increase, and although the numbers had risen to around 8,000 in early 2021, this is now still to be slowly declining, and that has also during the early sort of phases of Omicron as well. We've not seen an increase in council tax reduction so far. The current number of council tax reduction schemes claimants is around just over 7,600, but we may see further fluctuations. 8.13 and 8.14 also detail the funding that we propose to provide to parish councils again for 22-23. And I think you'll be welcome that this amount remains the same as the previous allocation, but will be reviewed again as part of the 23-24 medium-term financial strategy and budget process. There's 4 recommendations there. Chair, 2.1 to 2.4, I formally move them.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Harborough, second. The debate. Vote.
Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried.
Thank you. Item 14, review of members' allowances scheme. Melly Stimson to present.
Thank you, Chair. The Council is required to agree on an annual basis a scheme of allowances payable to members for the following financial year. And under the regulations, when making or amending the scheme, the Council shall have regard to the recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel, the IRP. Attached as Appendix A is the report and the recommendations of the IRP. So namely that as per paragraph 4.2 of their report in regards to the indexation, the IRP have acknowledged that members were very aware of the cost of the scheme and that a preference to linking any inflation rises to the officers' pay award has been made. The IRP considered that any increase in allowances for members should not exceed that negotiated by the National Joint Council for Local Government Services for council officers' pay or the annual rate of consumer prices index, including owner-occupiers housing, for the 12 months as measured by the rate published in October, whichever is the lowest. As the Local Government Association pay settlement is not normally available for the forthcoming year in time for the Council's budget setting, the current year's settlement is used for calculating the forthcoming year. However, the National Employers Group and the National Joint Council representing Unison United and the GMB Unisons have not been able to agree a pay settlement to date for the 21-22, and their members have been balloted for strike action. The pay offer which has been made would provide an increase of 2.75% for grade 1 staff, 1.75% for grades 2 to 12, and 1.5% for chief officers and chief executives. Therefore, members will need to consider whether they wish to increase the basic allowance pre the outcome of the pay settlement and by what percentage. Throughout the report, the financial implications have been based on the pay settlement being 1.75%. 1.75 increase would mean that the basic allowance would equate to £5,189. That's rounded to the nearest pound. Or should members opt to increase by 1.5, the basic allowance would equate to £5,176, rounded to the nearest pound. Alternatively, members could decide to increase the basic allowance to align with the pay award settlement. As we do not know the outcome of this, the negotiation may change. It's advisable to base this on a specific grade. And once the pay award is agreed, allowances would be backdated. The panel noted that when their recommendations were considered last year, that the council decided to retain the previous allowances scheme, subject to the inclusion of the allowance for the independent person and reserve independent persons of the Standards Committee, rather than accept the IRP's recommendations for a number of increased allowances. The IRP notes that these increases were intended to compensate for inflation to the cost of living, and that the IRP considers it preferable for small annual incremental increases rather than irregular large increases. The IRP considered the special responsibility allowances in paragraph 3.4 of their report. They noted that SRAs should continue to be expressed as a multiplier of the basic allowance for clarity and ease of calculation. The RP panel noted the council's preference to pay multiple SRAs and had previously accepted that this should continue for the 21-22, but that it be reviewed for the 22-23 financial year. The RP has therefore considered the issue again, heard the views of councillors and took into account the practice of other local authorities who predominantly only award single SRAs. The RP considered that paying a single SRA will act as a deterrent to individual councillors taking on too much responsibility and help to ensure the workload is spread across members. The RP therefore recommend that the council only award a single SRA in addition to the basic allowance. In regards to childcare and dependent carers allowance, the RP recommendation continues to be to increase in line with the London weighted real living wage to reflect the actual cost of childcare, to encourage diversity in the composition of the council, and to be more reflective of the actual costs for using a suitably qualified and competent carer. Regarding the frequency of the reviews, the RP were informed that the council would prefer a scheme that made provision for an annual adjustment by reference to an index. However, the RP considered that an annual review was required given the economic climate, ongoing pandemic and potential changes to council structure, operating procedures and meeting arrangements. Therefore, the RP recommendations only apply to the 22-23 financial year, and another review will be required next year. The independent person and reserve independent person allowance of the Standards Committee was not within the remit of the members' allowances regulations. However, last year the RP agreed to consider these allowances having not been assessed since 2012, and the role had also expanded to include potentially sitting on a panel to consider complaints against statutory officers. The RP recommends that the allowance is increased in line with the same inflation as the basic allowance, and on the basis that settlement is agreed at 1.75% would mean that an independent person would get 2,544 and the reserve independent persons would be 611. Members will need to consider whether they wish to increase this allowance now or align the pay award settlement as explained earlier. The RP were also requested to consider the appropriate allowance for the independent member on the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. And you'll remember that Council at its meeting on the 11th of November approved and the appointment of this role as of the 22-23 civic year. This role is included within 4.6 of the panel's report. In considering the function of the role, number of meetings per year and allowance by other councils, the RP recommend allowance of £1,000 per annum plus travel expenses. It was noted that as this was a new role and not all council have yet recruited or appointed the independent member, should this figure not attract a suitable candidate, the RP suggests that the service director in consultation with the executive member of Finance and IT be authorised to increase this to a maximum of £1,500 per annum. Just note that there is a typo error on recommendation 2.4, and this should be referred to as the independent member of FAR and not the independent person. And attached as Appendix B is the current members' allowances scheme with track changes illustrating what effect a 1.75 increase would have. Thank you, Chair, and apologies for that rather long explanation.
Thank you. I suggest we take these recommendations separately. Does any member wish to propose that as a motion? So separately, or Councillor David Levitt, seconded by Councillor Harburg. Okay, so 2.1. Sorry.
I would like to move an amendment to 2.2.
We're taking them separately, so we're doing 2.1 first.
Okay. Well, when we get there, I'd like to move an amendment to 2.2. Then.
Okay. Right. So we're going to take these separately. What I will need is a proposer and seconder for each recommendation. So for 2.1, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Dennis Harburg, and a seconder, Councillor Ruth Brown. Debate. You should. Are they speaking on this? I can't hear you. But it's written down here to be taken separately. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Sorry, I'm just taking advice. So we've got a proposer for the first one. Yes. Can we have a proposer for the second one, please? 2.2. Councillor Strong.
I'm slightly confused about the way that we're moving these recommendations without any debate or talk or anything, or
Shall I be as I was? I can't hear you. Jeanette, could you give advice, please?
You can get someone to propose and second all of that, and then someone can propose an amendment. I think the advice is that you take the votes on each of the recommendations, whatever they may be, in the substantive motion separately, Chair.
Right. You take your mask off. I can't hear you at all. Right. So going back a step. Now need a proposer for the whole lot, all four. Given Jeanette Thompson's advice. Yeah. Proposer for all four. So seeking advice again, Jeanette, shall we go for them individually?
I think I'm a little bit confused as to why you're not getting a proposer and seconder for an allowance. Legally, you have to approve a scheme. So you can obviously propose and second, and then someone or whoever's proposing and seconding could actually put forward an amendment at the same time as proposing the whole lot, and then we can deal with whatever that amendment is and then go back as the substantive motion, whatever that is.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
Chairman, you'll be relieved to know that I'm happy to propose the recommendations 2.1 to 2.4. And I have a seconder.
And the seconder being Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Did you have a motion? No? No, I'm sorry. It's getting to the point of the evening whereby really, we should be at home. I should be at home.
Okay, so now you've got a proposal second.
I can't hear you.
Now you have a proposal second to open it up to debate.
Right, so open it up for all four.
Yeah.
Right, I'm now going to open it to debate for all four recommendations. Councillor Strong.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. What I'd like to say is on this item is that we'd like to thank the Independent Remuneration Panel for their report and the advice that they've given us for that. I would like to say that I would like to amend item 2.2 and say that we would like that the settlement that we finally agree on, but is actually is deferred for implementation for 1 year. And I believe I have a seconder for that. In item 2.2, where we're asked to agree the members' allowances for period 22-23, that the allowance scheme is agreed, but would be deferred implementation for 1 year. So effectively, councillors' allowances would stay the same for this year, but we would take the allowance change in a year.
Chair, can I just intervene at that point? Just to point out that legally, again, you will have to reconsider this issue in January of next year. And again, in anticipation of that, we will have to go back to the panel. So you would have to, before you decide on the allowances scheme for next year, you would have to take into account whatever recommendations they again made. So I don't think it's lawful to approve something to come into a scheme for the subsequent years, because you can only approve this on a yearly basis under the regulations.
Councillor Dennis Harbour.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, I'm going to try my best with this because I'm aware of the time. So I think my position is that I would be happy to propose and support item recommendations 2.1, 2.3 and 2.4 for very clear reasons. This is an excellent report that the IRP has put together, and I'm incredibly grateful for the hard work and consideration that goes into this document every single year. And I think it's important that this council does not acknowledge how diligent and conscientious they are when it comes down to these matters. Item 2.3 agrees an increase to the independent person and reserve independent persons allowances, which I think, again, given the work and effort that they go into, it's right that we find a way to link that in some way to a particular metric that recognises the time and sacrifice that they make in performing this quite technical task. They do conduct in-depth interviews with group leaders and really do put us on the spot and ask us some tricky questions about council's commitments and all kinds of very odd accountancy things that I absolutely did not understand. So I think it's right and proper that they are properly compensated for the time that they give to us. And equally, I think 2.4 is an item that we can all agree on. And bearing in mind, this is a relatively new, I think, post. I think it's important that we ensure that we are providing adequate compensation to attract the right sort of people with the right sorts of skills and talents. Now, why have I skipped item 2, recommendation 2.2? It's simply because I think we're in a very, very difficult place at this point in time, aren't we, colleagues? We know how much time we devote to our work as councillors. We also know and respect the IRP's work in pulling together this report and considering the increases. But we also know that this scheme costs this council money. We know that our residents are facing a cost of living crisis. We know that our residents' council tax is going up. We know many residents have struggled to get through the pandemic. Some have lost jobs and more than that. So my biggest concern is, as much as we really do need to make sure that our members and people who wish to be councillors can and are adequately compensated for the time and service that they give to the public, I don't think that we can justify an increase in our allowances at this point in time. I'm equally concerned that the figure of 1.75 is one that we've had to arrive at based on what we think might happen in terms of pay negotiations. And clearly that's something that hasn't transpired and we don't yet have certainty. And I would be more comfortable if we were pegging our increase to a metric that was fair and that we had certainty was going to be the correct sum moving forward. So I don't think at this point in time, colleagues, it would be right for us to accept this very worthy and well-meaning recommendation from the IRP. That's not to say that I disagree with the formula and the approach that's been taken. I think that the approach is absolutely correct. I just think that circumstances are such that it wouldn't be right. So I would recommend, rather than 2.2 as it stands, we simply amend that to say that the council acknowledges the recommendation in the report in respect of members' allowances scheme for 2022 to 2023. However, cannot at this time accept this. And then clearly we've heard from Jeanette the legal process, which we must follow next year should we want to, increase allowances or freeze them again. And I will end with the caveat that obviously the longer we put off an increase in allowances, we're potentially storing up trouble for future, because we do not want to face a significant jump in councillors' allowances. We remember when that happened recently, it wasn't a very pleasant place for us to be in. So I think this year hopefully should remain a one-off. So that would be my suggested amendment to these recommendations, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis Halberg. I've just been reminded that Councillor Strong, your amendment was not seconded, wasn't it?
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, it's not lawful. Again.
Taken the advice from Jeanette Thompson, I'm happy to then amend it into the wording that the leader of the council, Councillor Dennis Harbour, was proposing. So I'm happy that I amend my amendment so that, as if I was told it was unlawful, and well, no, because my amendment has been moved and seconded, but the advice has been there, and it's been given back to me. So I believe I have the opportunity, if it's been told it's unlawful, to either amend it or withdraw it.
Jeanette, could you give advice, please?
Yes, you can withdraw it, and then you can propose another amendment should you wish and have that seconded. Obviously, Councillor Dennis Harbour didn't get a seconder for hers anyway, so we're just dealing with one at a time. If it's withdrawn, then you can move another amendment.
Just a second, right. So just hold there a second. Councillor Strong, are you willing to withdraw your amendment?
I said, having taken the advice from Jeanette Thompson, I would amend what I'd said, so that rather than to defer accepting it, is to not accepting it. But I do concur with the leader of the council that we should put on record the thanks that we give to the independent remuneration panel, because they do a lot of work on this. And I know that they are, certainly in my interview, they did express perhaps the fact that we hadn't taken their advice on the previous year when they had given the amendment. But for the reasons that Councillor Dennis Harbour gave, again, I feel uncomfortable as do many in my group, in accepting an increase. So I would therefore like to amend what I put down on the table and say that on the item of 2.2, that members do not agree to accept the scheme. And if Councillor Dennis Harbour would like to second that.
I mean, I do know that we need a form of words, a proper form of words.
Point of order or not, but I'm not entirely certain if a member can essentially hijack the amendment that another member has set out in detail and claim it as their own. However, in the interest of cross-party working, I would be more than happy if Councillor Strong wished to second my amendment.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have the exact wording from Councillor Harburg? I'll ask the officers that. Do we have that wording?
I can, bearing in mind that I tend to speak ad hoc and ad lib a lot. You have to bear with me and see if I can come up with it. Okay, so I think it was amending item 2.2. I'll wait for it to be quiet over there. Thank you. It's a little bit distracting. Thank you. So I think that we would like to amend recommendation 2.2 so that this council notes with respect the IRP's reports and outcomes. However, at this time, we feel unable to accept the recommendation in respect of the members' allowance scheme for 2022 to 2023. I think it was vaguely around that sort of wording.
Thank you. And that is now being seconded by Councillor Strong. Jeanette, is that wording okay?
Yeah.
Lovely. So I think I'm right in thinking that we've now got the 4 recommendations. We've got to do this amendment first. Right. So we will go back to 2.1 at some point. So we're going to first of all take the amendment for 2.2 as Councillor Harburg has just worded it. You got to vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. That amendment's carried.
That's 2.1. Yeah. We're going back to the whole thing together. Sure. Okay. That's why I say, aren't we going back to 2.1, getting that voted, and then 2.2? Okay, right. Let us debate the whole lot. That's the wrong answer. I'm sure that we should be looking at them one by one. Okay. It will help my thinking if you're not talking.
Motions, and obviously members need to discuss about the independent person
Right.
and how much they want to pay them.
Right, so individually, one by one. Yeah, right. Plan, I don't know what plan we're up to on this one, but we're going to debate each recommendation in turn, bearing in mind that decisions have got to be made by about 2.3. Yes, and 2.4. Let's do it simply, shall we? 2.1. Any debate on that one? Yep. Do you want the next one? 2.2, which is now the substantive motion. Any debate on that one? No. 2.3. What do we want from this?
What you want to pay the independent person, reserve independent person.
So what you want to pay the independent person and the reserve independent person. Thoughts on this? With what's there?
That you paid them 1.75% increase.
Yeah, 1.75% increase. No more debate on that. 2.4. Right. So shall we vote on, have we voted individually? All together. All together. All together. Okay, we're now going to vote all together. As amended, yes. But that's become the substantive recommendation. Yes, as amended. So how was that?
Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 15, electoral services, scale of fees, 2022 to 2023. Emily Simpson to leave the room. And Ian Cooper to present in a moment when she's left the room.
Chair, hopefully Anthony can step in as well because I'm Deputy Returning Officer, so I'm leaving.
Thank you, Jeanette. Order, please. Right, Ian Cooper. Yes. Ian, are you ready to talk to us?
Chair, it's quite possible he's having further internet problems. Oh, he's just popped up on my screen. So if I pause, Ian might be able to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me?
We can, I think.
Okay. So as you'll note from the report, this is setting the fees so the returning officer can staff the elections for next year. As you'll note from the report, the fees are generally rising with inflation, except in the instances where benchmarking against other authorities means that we need to be a bit more competitive, or where the benchmarks show that we're actually already paying sufficient. They've been frozen, and that gives rise to fees that are noted in the reports. So on that basis, that is the sum of the reports. So therefore, look for hopefully someone to.
I can have a proposer, please. Councillor Dennis Harburg to propose, and seconder, Councillor Brown.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Debate? No. Okay, can we go to the vote, please?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried.
Thank you. Invite Melanie and Jeanette back into the room. Thank you. Item 16, appointment of member, substitute and chair to the Planning Control Committee. William Edwards to present.
I'm going to be as brief as possible. Members, I have no updates to the report as written, and I commend the recommendations to you.
Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Brown.
I would like to propose that we accept these recommendations 2.1 to 2.3.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Dennis Harburg.
I think I might reserve my right to speak as well, depending what happens. I don't know.
Thank you. Can we go to debate? Councillor Strong.
I was a bit surprised actually that Councillor Brown.
Can you speak up a bit, please?
So I was slightly surprised that Councillor Brown has moved the recommendation since she's named in 2.3. I didn't know whether that was a good one, but I would like to propose an amendment to 2.2, and I would like to propose that Councillor Mike Rice is the chair of the Planning and Control Committee for the remainder of the civic year.
So do we need to vote on that first? We need a seconder. Can we have a seconder, please? That's Councillor Derbyshire.
Chairman.
So now we're voting on Mike. Right. What, for the whole lot? Right. Can we have the debate for the amendment, please? Councillor Harburg.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, I know, based on the numbers in this room this evening, that there is probably actually, no, it's not probably, is it? There is definitely absolutely no point in me speaking or attempting to make the case for the proportional representation of administration and opposition members on this particular committee. I especially know that there is clearly no point in me trying to make the case for representative democracy to continue when a number of members of this council are no longer with us or unable to attend, or have had to leave this meeting this evening as a direct result of the exceptional circumstances of the pandemic. Clearly, there is no point, members, is there, in me making those comments? And yet, actually, I am. Let us remember that Councillor Brown is leaving her role as chair of the Planning Committee because we lost Councillor Paul Clark as our executive planning member. Therefore, this vacancy, which is now being competed for, is a direct result of losses incurred by the exceptional circumstances of the pandemic, and potentially for us to have the appointment of an opposition member in this role vacated as it has been, purely on the basis of the opposition having the ability to have more members in this chamber because they have fewer members who are either no longer with us or shielding because they are clinically vulnerable or currently unwell with COVID symptoms, seems to my mind to be fundamentally undemocratic. So with the utmost respect to all members in this room, I would ask them to do the right thing. And if they are making a move which is potentially undemocratic and does not reflect the views of our electorate cast only last May, then I've forgotten what the start of that sentence was, I'm sorry. But I think members take my point on this. But like I said, I don't think there's very much point me making these arguments to the opposition. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Compton?
Thank you, Chair. And with a great deal of respect, I think you've given Councillor Mike Rice a bit of a disservice then when you haven't mentioned how capable he is in the role. Just want to make that point that he is very capable, and I think that's a little bit harsh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very similar to Councillor Compton, really. I think that what I'm voting for is a vacancy, and I'm voting potentially the intention to support a councillor who has quite a few years of experience in this particular role.
Thank you. I was just checking. I thought I had. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I just remind the Leader of the Council that democracy is about those who have more representation usually win the votes. That's what democracy is about. More people vote for it, more people get it. That's what democracy is. And the remarks about people being absent, we have members absent through illness as well tonight. Somebody who is terminally ill. So I do resent those remarks. Thank you, Chair.
That Councillor Mike Rice be appointed as Chair of the Planning Control Committee for the remainder of the civic year 2021 to 2022.
Thank you, Chair. That amendment is carried.
That's now substantial. So we're going to now all 4 recommendations. Sorry? Oh, sorry, 3. Getting late. I think we've had a debate on that. No one else wants to speak. So we have the vote on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. That motion's carried.
Thank you. That brings us to the close of the meeting. Before you go, we'll need to collect in your pieces of paper because they're actually part of second part of the meeting. Yes. When your piece of paper has been collected, you can then make your way out of the chamber as safely as you can, please. Good night.